the home of the 3rd Infantry Division. This shooting, according to the Fort Stewart Public Affairs, was contained into the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, which officials tell me is not the full base, but just a section. That active shooter incident was there. The 5 soldiers shot, now taken to the hospital. We should get updates more about the suspect now in custody and the condition of those soldiers as the day goes along.
Well, definitely a tense time there on the base where so many families live as well. Tell us about what that combat team is specialized in, because likely, as we mentioned before, the training that they have to do their jobs literally had to be put in action there on their own base.
That's right. 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, we don't know. I shouldn't jump to conclusions about whether or not those 5 soldiers were part of the Armored Brigade Combat Team, but Fort Stewart is a large training base, so those soldiers would have been able to handle the pressure, handle the tense situation that happened today, but we don't know necessarily whether those 5 soldiers were part of that brigade combat team. Not yet.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ellie Watson. We appreciate it. We know you have a busy day there ahead at the Pentagon. While we have you, sort of give us an idea of security at any U.S. military base on any given day. Once again, to the point that it's really hard to get onto one of these bases, so that draws a lot of questions.
There is heavy security getting on base. I know bases in the area, when we have to go to Joint Base Andrews or to over up near Arlington National Cemetery, there are several gates. You have to, days in advance, if you don't have a military ID, get your visitor information cleared. And so the fact that this incident was on base, far into the base, is of concern.
Of concern, indeed. And we don't know who the shooter is. We don't know if the shooter had any affiliation there on that base. But what we can surmise is the shooter was able to get, as you put, deep into the base. So what will be the Pentagon response? We just saw the response from the President of the United States via his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. What happens now at the Pentagon where you're sitting?
The Army Criminal Investigative Division will work with local law enforcement to figure out how the suspect got on base, who the suspect is, provide details, and then also, first and foremost, update us on the condition of the soldiers. We haven't yet heard from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, but I expect, like the White House, the Pentagon will confirm that the Secretary has been briefed. We haven't gotten that yet, but that's kind of the next step in this process as the day goes along.
5 injured, shooter apprehended there at a military base. Ellie Watson, thank you so much. Let's go back to live coverage from CBS WTOC on the ground there.
One of the gates is not seeing that much attention at this point, but there still is the military police. Megan, if we could zoom in, we have a military person just posted up with a gun on top of that car. We know the suspect, though, has been arrested, but I think this is all just a precaution at this point. They're just making sure the facility stays secure. We know that 5 people so far have been shot, as you guys have mentioned. We're told that these soldiers were treated on site, then moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital, potentially Memorial Hospital as well. We're not sure exactly their condition at this point, but what we do know so far, we saw a lot of ambulances coming in and out. There's no open threat to the community at this point, but this is garnering a lot of attention around the base. Pretty much every single street that we've been on so far has had police vehicles and emergency vehicles just speeding by us. But we're going to keep you posted as far as the base goes. We haven't seen that many people coming in or out at this point. I think that's just because the lockdown was just recently lifted, but we'll be sure to check in with you guys the more that we see coming out of the base, coming into the base. But for now, back to you guys.
All right, our first look there at the gate, of course, like we've been talking about, now that the victims, the 2 that we think are going to Memorial Hospital, are going to be driving, it's going to take them a while, just based on how long it took our crews, Madeline right there, to get out to that gate when she was out of here more than an hour ago.
Yeah, and it makes sense. She said no one's going in and out. This just happened. So the lockdown just was lifted about an hour ago. So, you know, this is still fresh. we're not expecting much movement in and out right now. They were telling people to shelter in place, lock their windows, lock their doors while this was unfolding. And here's a map again showing exactly where this all happened. Again, 5 soldiers shot in this Fort Stewart lockdown. We are still working to confirm their conditions. We know 2 of those soldiers are now being transported as we speak to Memorial Hospital to be treated there in their trauma center. We don't know their conditions. That is a detail that we are working to figure out. Again, here's showing you the distance from Savannah, and this is how long it took our crews to get out there. It's not close to Savannah, so as you can imagine, it took us some time to get those initial photos and those initial videos into our newsroom.
Of course, and that area right there that has a bullseye on it right now, 2ABCT, those aren't just random letters. That's the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. That's where the folks at Fort Stewart are telling us this shooting happened in particular. When there are so many different areas of the base, that's the one. If you know folks in that 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, those are the folks most impacted by this, and that's the specific area Fort Stewart officials are telling us where this shooting happened. Again, that happened before 11 o'clock. They're telling us that law enforcement was dispatched to that area right there where you see on your screen at 10:56 a.m., and this is a live look at the gate that Madeline Bierster is at with our photographer Megan Leroy. You can see that soldier, that military police officer, stationed up, posted up on top of that vehicle, pointing his, what I can assume to be a rifle of some sort, out at the road as folks are potentially approaching that area. And we know that lockdown has been lifted, so folks are now able to move around freely past the gates on the other side. You see that gate on the right side of your screen right there. That is the entryway at this portion of Fort Stewart where our crews are set up, and this is a live look at that right now.
Yeah, these are the initial images we're getting into our newsroom right here. First look images of Fort Stewart after this lockdown went into effect just before 11 o'clock this morning. So it's interesting to see, you know, what's going on there now and how many law enforcement are out. Right now we can only see 1 car with its lights on, military police. You can see it says there on the side. He does have his rifle drawn though. Not sure exactly if that's normal for Fort Stewart or if this is a special procedure that's happening right here, but these are the first images of Fort Stewart coming out after this lockdown went into effect.
And let's repeat why this is happening. If you're just joining us, 5 soldiers have been shot in an active shooter incident in that 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area of Fort Stewart, just beyond the gate you're looking at right now, one of the entry gates to the base. We are told that that suspect, as you see at the bottom of your screen, is in custody, and that allowed the lockdown to be lifted that was put in place. The lockdown lifted at about 12:10, so 50 minutes ago, and this still what you're seeing, what we're seeing with you out in front of one of the gates right now that, as you can see, is closed with those 3 officers kind of in that area, including the one with his rifle drawn over his MP vehicle.
So we are hearing that President Trump has been briefed on this shooting at Fort Stewart. So we just learned that moments ago. His press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, notified via Twitter or X that the president has been briefed on this shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia, and that the White House is closely monitoring this unfolding situation. Again, this is a fluid situation, so we are getting information right now into our newsroom as we speak, and things are changing, things are moving. We have a statement right here, a new statement. This is from Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr, and he says that as we continue to monitor the situation out of Fort Stewart, that they are asking that all Georgians join them in praying for the victims and our entire military community. We heard a similar statement from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp earlier, as well as Congressman Buddy Carter. So reaction now pouring in, not only from across the state and the region, but also on a national level.
The eyes, apparently, of really the country, certainly the state of Georgia, are here in our area right now, yet again, just a month removed from that shooting at the Oglethorpe Mall where that was also the case. And just like in our coverage of that shooting that happened again at the beginning of July, now this shooting happening at the beginning of August, we'll continue to tell you that this information that we get will continue to develop and change. And all we will try to do is be transparent with you about that information as we get it, tell you where we're getting it from, how our sources are bringing you the latest information and updates, and then continue to tell you when that kind of a detail changes. We saw that happen just moments ago. As Shay was telling us, she was hearing from folks at Memorial Hospital that the more severely injured victims of this shooting were going to be transported to Memorial, which is a level 1 trauma center, the only in the area, by helicopter. But that changed because of weather. And so now the 2 soldiers who were shot that are headed to Savannah are being brought to Memorial by car. Just an example of how this information can continue to change and how we'll continue to show you that. I want to show you what Shay is looking at over at Memorial Hospital right now. You can see there's an ambulance sitting in the bay.
Listening to WTOC, it's our opportunity to have journalists right there where you are at all times in your community. You are looking live right now at the hospital that is receiving those patients. Once again, at least 5 people injured and a shooter apprehended following an attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call watching this story and the developments closely. So Chanel, we just heard from those local viewers what's happening there. It sounded like in some of the initial reports that the threat was neutralized, but then you see that sharpshooter right there with his gun aimed right there on the hood of his military vehicle. Are we to assume that that base is just on high alert protection on the outside and that that gun is pointed just to keep the public out?
Yeah, I mean, look, this looks like terrifying moments at the Fort Stewart Army base, Reed, and still so many questions about exactly how this happened and who is involved here. But the base right now is saying at least 5 of its soldiers were shot. Again, we don't know their conditions at this point, but I can tell you those soldiers, Reed, were treated on site, and then they were moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. I think we just had that shot up for our viewers before we came to me. We can also report this hour, Reed, that the active shooter has been apprehended and the lockdown has been lifted on the main part of the base just over an hour and a half after the lockdown was installed. We're also, important to mention, told that there is no current threat to public safety. Let's just remind everybody how this played out and how we got here, right, Reed? Law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting. This happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area just before 11 o'clock. It happened at 10:56 a.m. This is important to mention because, Reed, this team is known as the Spartans. This brigade is recognized as the Army's most modernized and lethal unit. The Army had advised people who were on the base at that time to stay inside. They put out this message on social media, on Facebook, saying close your doors, lock your windows and doors before the shooter was apprehended at about 11:35 a.m. Now, by 12:10 p.m., Fort Stewart had lifted the lockdown of the main containment area. But again, the 2nd ABCT complex is still locked down for now. Just moments ago, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had said, look, the president has been briefed on this and the White House is now closely monitoring the situation. And this will and continue to be a huge investigation, Reed. We're seeing multiple law enforcement agencies now working together on this, including, of course, Georgia State Police, but also the FBI's Atlanta office and the ATF is assisting. We also know, Reed, this has had a ripple effect in the community, right? There are 3 elementary schools that are actually on this base. All 3 were in lockdown. I can tell you now those lockdowns have been lifted. The superintendent saying in a statement, there is no immediate threat to schools at this time. And I also want to mention this is such a huge base. It's the biggest east of the Mississippi River with over 10,000 people who live there. That includes not just soldiers, but also family members, Army civilian employees, and it's about 40 miles southwest of Savannah, which is why it took our crews a second to sort of get there and bring us those images. I just want to ask our control room if we have an image of the front door of that military base. I know we've been going to that, which sort of shows the military scene on the ground there. And I was doing some digging here, Reed, just to get some perspective on this. The last mass shooting at a military base was in 2019 at Pensacola, Florida, where 3 people were killed. But again, we know 5 soldiers were shot here today at Fort Stewart Army Base, and we will continue to bring you the latest here on CBS News 24/7.
Chanel Call, thank you so much for that update. Let's go back to Anna Schechter. And Anna, as we think about and project ourselves into that tense moment after the bullets flew, my friend, you've got to think how frustrating it is for these soldiers, because according to WTOC's reporting there in Savannah, they were going to take 2 of the more critically wounded soldiers by helicopter, but then weather mandated that they have to be driven that 45 minutes that Chanel just mentioned. That has got to be tense.
That's exactly right. But luckily they were in a place where you have trained medical personnel who can initially administer, for example, put on a tourniquet if needed. I mean, these are highly specialized units. I mean, even their fellow soldiers would have been able to step in and help initially stop bleeding and the like. But it sounds to me from our affiliates reporting that at least 2 people are bound for a trauma center for more critical care, and that was delayed. Their transportation was delayed. So yes, very frustrating, of course. And also, we'll see if the suspect was one of their own, was a member of the team or somebody who worked there on the base. As you mentioned earlier, you need to have a security clearance to actually even enter on base. So right now, the suspect is in custody. Investigators, they always want to be able to interview the person immediately, one-on-one, to try to piece together the timeline of exactly what led up, and of course to rule out if anyone else knew of or supported the attack. I mean, that is kind of the number one immediate goal, because they want to mitigate any other threat. And they also want to interview anyone who might have had any information that this attack was coming. Very important first steps in this investigative process. And of course, all of that information is going to be meticulously gathered and preserved, because this will be part of the story as a case goes forward, eventually as a prosecutor brings a case. So right now, these are very key minutes, hours unfolding right now in the investigative process, Reed.
Well, and Anna, it occurs to me as we try to deduce what the profile of that alleged shooter is, this was somebody who at a minimum was able to get proximity to some highly specialized, highly trained military personnel. You just heard Chanel really characterize them as being elite. Characterize for
That's
us
right.
Anybody in the proximity of them or anybody who would be training with them. They've been in the military for quite some time, no?
For sure. This unit, as Chanel was saying, highly specialized, trained for combat. This is the milieu that we're talking about, and these are also the victims, the 5 soldiers who were shot. Were a part of this. So potentially the suspect was highly trained and had access to weapons. So we're waiting to hear. Obviously, the investigators now have determined themselves an identification, and they're going to want to go and search, obtain electronic devices. They're going to want to look for other weapons that might have been stockpiled. They're going to want to look for motive, of course. Look for if they were influenced online, if it was a personal grievance. I mean, they're going to chase down everything, and there are so many different investigative avenues that they're going to be going down simultaneously, and that has already kicked in. That is already underway.
Anna Schechter, thank you so much. And of course, our hearts with the families who are attached to those 5 soldiers who have been injured in that shooting. We are watching the hospitals in that area. Journalists on the ground with WTOC pick up the coverage from right outside the hospital.
About the victims that we do know about, especially the 2 that, Shay, you learned are en route right now to Savannah, to Memorial Hospital. What are you learning now?
We are still waiting for those 2 victims to arrive here. We do know that it's going to be via ambulance, not helicopter, because of the weather situation. So that's just another added factor here in a situation that nobody wants to confront, nobody wants to have to deal with, but that is the unfortunate situation that we're seeing here today. So we know that there are at least 2 people en route from Fort Stewart, and keep in mind how long of a drive that is from Fort Stewart into the heart of Savannah to get to the hospital. Obviously, they're in an ambulance. They're going to be able to go faster, have sirens on, so people are going to be moving out of their way. But it is a longer travel time than if they had been arriving here via ambulance. So we are here at Memorial Hospital waiting outside of the ambulance bay where ambulance drop-offs occur. Now, I can tell you that we have also seen several Savannah Police Department officers pulling up to the emergency room over the last couple of minutes. I see at least 2 or 3 at the walk-in entrance, and then there's 1 lone officer's car over by the ambulance bay. We don't know if that is related to the soldiers coming in, but in these high-profile situations, that's not uncommon to have some kind of a police presence to assist and make sure that people's identities aren't revealed, things of that nature. So we are aware that it could be related, but we don't know 100% for sure if that is related. So again, we are expecting 2 soldiers to be transported here. The Army has confirmed that at least 5 people were shot, and so we don't know what the conditions are of those other 3 people. Wishful thinking says that they're able to get their injuries treated at Wynn Army Hospital, but we don't know for sure whether that's the case. The 2 people that are going to be coming here to Memorial, we can infer that their injuries are going to be on the more severe end, because Memorial is the only level 1 trauma center in our area, and it's the only hospital that is going to be suitable to treat more severe or critical injuries. So we can infer that at least those 2 people are seriously or critically injured. We don't know exactly what their status is right now. If we had their names, which I can tell you we don't at this time, but if we had their names in a typical situation, we could give those names to the hospital and they could at least give us an update on what their condition is, tell us whether they're in stable condition, critical condition, serious condition, what the extent of their injuries are. But because these are soldiers that we're talking about, that information is going to have to come directly from the Army. I can tell you that I have been communicating with the Army since I've been down here on the ground, trying to get more information about the conditions of these soldiers and whether there have been any deaths. The word casualty has been said. Again, just to emphasize, casualty could mean a death, but it could also mean a serious injury. So I am in communication with those officials for the Army, and as soon as I have any information to share, I will. But just keep in mind that this is an extremely fluid situation, and as you can imagine, likely a very chaotic situation. Now that there's no ongoing threat to the public and that the people responsible for this has been apprehended, that gives way for people to start getting their ducks in a row and figuring out what is fact and what is not fact. And we're going to continue to bring you the facts here on WTOC, but keep in mind, because of the fluidity of the situation, that can change. As soon as anybody comes here to the hospital, we will be the first to let you know, but for now I am going to send it back to the studio.
All right, Shay, thanks for that live
listening in
report.
to WTOC coverage. Likely you heard me with my microphone on. I was asking my producer, are we hearing a helicopter there? Because I could have swore I heard one. That would be good news, because as we rewind the tape, we know that 2 of those soldiers who were shot, the most critically wounded, according to reports, were not able to fly by helicopter to that hospital. They have to, because of weather conditions, be taken by an ambulance. But hearing that overhead raises some questions here. So we're all holding our breath to hear the status of those 5 soldiers who were shot and injured there on their Army base in Georgia. Let's put that aside for a moment as we all hold a prayer for those soldiers, and let's talk about the suspect. Let's talk with somebody who knows how these investigations go down, former FBI official Tim Gallagher. Tim, first of all, just want to get your reaction to what you see outside that hospital. I've been at scenes like this. Does it strike you that that hospital seems quiet at this point?
Yes, thanks for having me on here, Reed. Yes, you want, that first hour is absolutely critical to get the wounded treated, get them, first level care. The good news story here is you heard Anna say before, when we're training people to how to react to an active shooter, we're like talking about that first aid, that stop the bleed, and that, on a military base, people in that room would have been trained in that. So the initial triage that was handled on site, the initial aid that was given, none better, right? So that's the good news story. You would have liked to have seen them getting to the hospital quicker, but as I said, they're receiving treatment along the way.
And that is good to know that training can come into play. But there's also the other story, and that is the investigation into who pulled the trigger and why they would do something like this. In recent mass shootings, even in the Midtown Manhattan mass shooting, very quickly we started to get a profile of that shooter and the allegations that he had mental illness. Because the big question is, when things like this happen, is why didn't somebody see warning signs before? What will happen at the FBI level, at the investigative level, to try to figure out if this person had any warning signs that perhaps were missed?
Right. So as you're mentioning, there's a command post that stood up right now, the FBI side by side with Army Criminal Investigative Command and the state police. One of the things the FBI is doing is going back into its holdings. What did the FBI know? What have people reported on in the past that has to do with this individual? What are some things that, may not be identified with his name, but that could be him, right? So they're going to go back and see what was out there and then develop those leads and interview people to figure out what exactly it was that, that may have pushed him over the edge. What was what took him from ideation to action, and trying to, get evidence as to who knew what and when, and how can we have how they could put a criminal case together.
So from the vantage point of the FBI also, you saw some of those live images coming from our affiliate WTOC, and you saw the law enforcement officer with a long gun. We would think that this is a sniper, somebody who's trained as a sniper, still looking through the sites there. We're also hearing about securing that perimeter. We know that the threat has been eliminated. Some people are able in that community to go about their daily activities, but yet you see that long gun and that soldier there with his eyes literally through the sights. Do you think the perimeter is secure when you see a scene like that, or is that just keeping the perimeter secure?
Yeah, they're going to be on high alert, the Army, on the outer perimeter for quite some time, while they work the scene here. You're always afraid, or you're always cognizant of the fact that there could be, a secondary shooter. That doesn't appear to be the case right here. But there's going to be a surge of law enforcement resources, whether that be crime scene processing, victim witness interviewing, and you want to keep that perimeter as secure as possible, because you don't want this to present a target of opportunity for someone else out there who may have an axe to grind, with the U.S. Army.
Tim Gallagher, thank you so much. I anticipate we'll be talking to you a lot more throughout the day as we learn about the victims and the alleged shooter. Okay, so let's go to the Pentagon and Ellie Watson, who is standing by. Ellie, we're aware that the president has been briefed on this. You had mentioned the last time we talked that you expected we should hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Anything there? Any developments at the Pentagon?
Not yet. I think the Defense Secretary will likely be briefed today, but we haven't heard an update on that. We're hearing from Army officials who are still working to confirm the extent of the injuries. We know 5 soldiers shot. They were treated on site and then transported to community hospital, and then our local affiliate says some may be going to the Savannah area hospital, indicating their wounds may be more severe. The shooter was apprehended. It seemed to be a tense situation, tense 30 minutes, but the shooter was apprehended within 30 minutes once local law enforcement helped out and apprehended the shooter. We will learn more as the day goes along about the severity of the injuries to the 5 soldiers and the identity of the suspect as the Army Criminal Investigative Division looks into this, how the shooter got on base, whether he had access to the base, what the type of weapon was, and the motive.
Well, and all eyes right now are on that Fort Stewart campus there where thousands of people live. But we also are aware that Fort Stewart is one of many military bases all over the United States. What happens when there is an active shooting situation on one military base at other bases around the country?
I think the Army will be on high alert throughout the country just to make sure, as your previous guest noted, that no one who has an axe to grind with the Army tries to take advantage of some of the tension, some of the stress that is coming out of the incident at Fort Stewart today. Fort Stewart says there's no more active threat to the base there, but the Army, the military across the country will continue to monitor to make sure there are no copycats who try and take advantage.
And certainly training and strength of America's military and the military bases right there top of mind for all of us. Ellie Watson at the Pentagon, thank you so much for talking to us once again. Okay, journalists in your communities, and to prove that, our partners at WTOC CBS affiliate in Savannah and their coverage to their locals. Watch.
We're going to check in now with our Shay Schrader, who is live at Memorial Health.
Yes, we are here at Memorial Hospital. We can hear sirens in the distance and have been alerted by Memorial officials that this is likely the soldiers arriving from Wynn Army Base Hospital. Now, we can see a Savannah Police Department officer over here on the corner, likely in place for the arrival, given that these are going to be some high-profile patients coming in here. So we are expecting to see some lights and sirens on an ambulance as it comes through here. Again, we could hear sirens just a little bit ago. Officials from Memorial telling us that is likely the patients from Wynn Army Hospital coming in here. We are expecting that 2 patients will be coming from the base. Again, Fort Stewart has confirmed that at least 5 people were shot on the base, and 2 of them are coming here to Memorial in Savannah for treatment. Now, we will continue to remind you that Memorial is the only level 1 trauma center that we have in the area, so it's really the only appropriate center to be treating somebody with a serious or a critical injury, especially the type of injury that you would sustain with a gunshot. Now, again, I can hear sirens coming from, it sounds close to the hospital, coming from the direction of Duren. We are situated at the ER here at Memorial Health. We were expecting originally today that patients be brought here by a helicopter and that they would be landing on the helipad, just given the severity of the situation and the nature of the injuries that we're expecting these folks to have. But because of the weather, they were forced to bring patients here to Memorial by ambulance. Now, again, we have been hearing sirens, and we can see officers from the Savannah Police Department getting out and monitoring the situation, as you would do with, high-profile patients and things like that, to protect their identities, the nature of those injuries and things. So we are going to continue to keep you updated. I'm not hearing the sirens anymore. Officials from Memorial had said that they thought that could be the patients. It may be somebody else, but we will be sure to bring you right back here just as soon as we have eyes on an ambulance, and we will let you know when those patients get here. For now, I'll send it back to the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Shay, for the very latest information. As Shay mentioned that,
Listening to coverage from WTOC in Savannah as we await the arrival of soldiers for treatment there at that hospital. CBS News 24/7 with continuing coverage of the attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia when we come back.
As we age, we get lines, and that's okay. But our makeup needs change. Traditional powdery foundations can make you look worse. They sink into your lines and dry down your skin. We need a foundation that is equal parts skincare and makeup. That's why I created What the Foundation. It's a hybrid product that blends light to medium coverage foundation and tinted moisture balm. It's moisturizing and melts seamlessly into your skin. Learn more at jonesroadbeauty.com.
Since the dawn of Manscaped, men have overshared. Like peacocks.
That's a weird one.
Too proud of their feathers.
Oh, he trims.
But it's a new day.
I'm having this feeling of, not offended? What is that?
That's a phase.
Oh.
Because now there are tools to shave a new part. Send face pics instead. Manscaped.
Greenlight helps families tackle money and life lessons early, so they're ready for anything. Send money instantly for gas, field trips, movies, you name it. They can also get paid by friends and family with your approval on every payment. Before you know it, you'll watch on with pride as they pass on their knowledge to their own family. Let's build a future where your whole family can enjoy more and worry less. With Greenlight.
Want the fastest working GLP-1? For half the price?
Ro now offers FDA-approved weight loss injections cheaper, so you can see weight loss results faster. Lose 20% of your weight with the formula from Eli Lilly that hits not one, but 2 hormones to work harder. Weight loss faster, confidence higher, price cheaper. See if you qualify at ro.co/TV.
This message is for guys who like being guys. We're Public Rec, a clothing brand for guys who don't do fussy or fashiony. With stretchy, breathable fabrics and actual sizing that fits real life, we offer a cheat code for looking good without looking like you tried. You stay comfortable with who you are. We keep you comfortable while you do you. Public Rec, never change.
Once you've taken someone, you either kill them or you get caught.
We have read your diary, including the last entry. Was your throat cut?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Every person that worked on this case was traumatized at some level.
Streaming on Paramount Plus and returning CBS Fall.
Back to that breaking news out of Georgia and a military base. At least 5 soldiers hurt after a shooting on the campus of that military base. Watching this closely, CBS News correspondent Chanel calls. Chanel, we're hearing from WTOC and our reporter there that sirens are now in the distance. It sounds like 2 of the most critically wounded soldiers are about to arrive at the hospital.
Yeah, there was a bit of a delay in getting them there. That's because they couldn't be transferred via a helicopter due to some weather concerns on the ground. So they were being sent there through an ambulance, and we're hearing again they are set to arrive there shortly, but there was unfortunately a delay. I also want to mention, Reed, we do have some new video from Citizens App inside Fort Stewart where we can apparently see the soldiers walking through. This will be the first time I'm also seeing this video. Take a look and just see what this looked like for them inside the base as these obviously chaotic moments were playing out when they found out they were in lockdown. So again, a short 10-second video here just showing a little bit of what it was like inside the base during that moment in time. Let's just again remind our viewers how we got here, how this all played out. We know law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting. This happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area just before 11 a.m. at 10:56 this morning. This is important to note. We were talking about this last time, Reed, because this team is known as the Spartans. This brigade, it's recognized as the Army's most modernized and lethal unit. The Army had advised people that were on the base to stay inside, to close and to lock their doors and the windows before the shooter was apprehended at 11:35 a.m. Now, during that time, that's when the Army says 5 soldiers were shot. Again, we do not know their conditions at this point, but we do know that 2 of them are being transferred to Memorial Hospital. And again, because the helicopter couldn't fly due to bad weather, they are being sent there via an ambulance, and there was a bit of a delay there. By 12:10 p.m., Reed, we know that the active shooter was apprehended, and the Fort Stewart base had lifted the lockdown on this main containment area, but the 2nd ABCT complex, that is still locked down for now. We are, though, told there is no current threat to public safety, and this is important because there is such a large community out there. We're also seeing a huge federal response to this incident, right? The White House had just sent out a message on social media through Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt in the last hour saying the president has been briefed and the White House is now closely monitoring the situation. We're also seeing multiple law enforcement agencies coming together and working together on this investigation, including, of course, Georgia State Police, but also the FBI's Atlanta office, Reed, and the ATF. They are also assisting here. I do want to talk about where this happened and just how this impacted the community, because there are 3 elementary schools that are on this base. They were all in lockdown during that hour and a half of chaos. Those lockdowns have now been lifted, but this is a huge base, Reed. It's the biggest east of the Mississippi River. There are over 10,000 people who live there. That includes not just soldiers, but we're also talking about family members and Army civilian employees who live there. Just as a locator, I can tell you it's It's about 40 miles southwest of Savannah, which is why it took a couple of moments for our local crews to actually get there and get you video on the ground. We've since seen some of those images, you know, the military police cars outside the base. The last mass shooting at a military base like this one was back in 2019, Reed, at Pensacola, Florida, and 3 people there were killed. At this point, again, we know 5 people were at least injured in the situation that played out at Fort Stewart today. We are still waiting to get some updates on their conditions. 2 of them, we are being told, are almost at Memorial Hospital now.
Chanel Call, thank you. And for our viewers at home, we just want to let you know the reason why you're not seeing a lot of video there or even helicopter video like you usually see. As she just mentioned, this is a military base. Likely impossible to get a news helicopter over to look down into the scene. That airspace is likely protected. And then the entire place just in complete lockdown. Also because the fact that it takes a long time for news crews to get there, that's why you're only starting to see images come in like the one that you saw from Citizens App right there at the top. But let's bring in Anna Schechter. She's senior coordinating producer for our Crime and Public Safety Unit. Anna, you had your eyes on that video we just showed from on the inside of the base. What strikes you from what you saw?
Well, you know, there's always a chaotic scene when people are alerted that there's an active shooter situation, and police arrived. They were called at 10:56 a.m. The shooter was apprehended at 11:34 a.m. or 11:35 a.m. Excuse me. So that's more than a half an hour of time for a lot of you know, people wondering what's going on, wondering what to do. If there were more than one perpetrator. So it's very scary, but the fact that you were on a military base, at least for the soldiers who were there in the immediate area, they are highly trained. They're trained to deal with this kind of situation. And so they would that training would kick in, and they follow protocol. Probably also in terms of immediately helping the victims, those who were injured, because they all have basic combat medical training as well. That's sort of part of it, so that they can care for their fellow soldiers out in the battlefield. So that's the population that we're talking about. And, you know, just thinking about the families of these 5 individuals and having to find out that, you know, they were the unlucky ones who were among those injured amidst, this is a community of thousands of people, soldiers, their spouses, and their children, and then other civilians who work there. So just heartbreaking for them to get that phone call or have someone come to their door and tell them what has just happened to their loved one, and the fact, you know, that they're likely being transported to a local hospital. I imagine families are probably trying to get there, if they're not there already, to be with their loved ones in the hospital. And, you know, it was really heartbreaking to hear that there was that delay and having to, you know, be stuck in traffic. And you can imagine the ambulance with the sirens blaring and cars moving off the road to let that ambulance pass, so those injured could get the care that they need. But again, you know, when we look at that video and you're thinking in those moments, you know, these soldiers, even though they sign up for combat, they're not expecting this to happen in their own training base where they and their families live. It's a shock to everyone, no matter how much training you have. And also, you know, these teams get so close. They describe themselves as family members often, because they go through the trenches together. So to see, you know, a member of your team be shot and fall, I mean, that's very traumatic for all of those soldiers who were there, who witnessed that event today.
Well, and I, like you, have had the privilege of knowing many of our nation's servants in many branches of military. My dad's an Army veteran, and listen, if you ask an Army veteran in a crisis, who do you want to have your back? They will point to the soldier to the left and to the right, in front of them, behind them, and they'll say, my brothers, my sisters here next to me. So we know that they were able to lean on their training and lean on their brothers and sisters in that training in those crucial moments. But also, you know, you see that map that we had up there, and you see the Army base, and then you see Savannah far away. At least on the map, it looks far away. It is important to note that the only reason we're not seeing a helicopter get help more immediately for the two who are most severely injured. And there you go. You see the map there, Fort Stewart Army Base, and then it is quite a distance to Savannah, where that level 1 trauma hospital is. The reason why a helicopter couldn't lift off of the Army base and get over to Savannah is because of weather conditions. But Anna, it's not to say that there wasn't immediate help and immediate treatment and training offered those soldiers while they have that agonizing drive over into Savannah.
That's right. That's right. So those soldiers, and there are medical personnel who are on site who also live at that base. I mean, you think of a base, it's a community in and of itself with medical personnel who are there, its own law enforcement apparatus. So, you know, police on the base responded likely to that call, and the Department of Defense is the lead investigating this. They are the lead agency on this. And so those law enforcement personnel who are based there, they were the first responders to get there, treat those victims, and apprehend the suspect. You know, each of those buildings that we're seeing, there are multiple levels there. So we don't know if the suspect was able to run upstairs or, you know, leave the premises after firing shots. It took about a half an hour for law enforcement to apprehend him, so they had to locate him. You can imagine what that is like for those first responders who know there is an armed and dangerous person that they need to go after and apprehend. And, you know, we can put ourselves in those shoes, the bravery that they have to tap into to go and apprehend a suspect. And from all the reporting and what's come out of the base, you know, the suspect has been apprehended, is in custody, is likely being questioned at this time. They want to get as much information as quickly as possible for this burgeoning investigation that we were talking about in the last half hour, Reed.
Anna Schechter, thank you so much for that. And as the nation holds its breath to hear the fate of those 5 soldiers injured in that shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Just a moment ago, we were able to watch CBS affiliate WTOC. They were starting to hear sirens approaching that hospital. Their hope, as is ours, is that the ambulances are carrying those soldiers. Let's go ahead and listen into their coverage right now to see if they have an update.
Let's get to her right away.
Yes, so actually I see another ambulance coming in right now. That is the Central EMS ambulance, the ambulance that we've seen from when Army Community Hospital has been labeled U.S. Army. So I don't believe that this is an ambulance that's carrying any soldiers, although we don't know that for certain. But I can tell you the last ambulance we saw that had the last soldier was labeled U.S. Army. One soldier was taken here to Memorial Hospital. I would say it's been probably 10 or 15 minutes or so now. We don't know the conditions of any of the soldiers that have been shot or involved in this shooting. The Army hasn't given out that information. We did just get a press release from the Army several minutes ago saying that they weren't going to provide any further information until the investigation is complete. But again, we're also hearing about a press conference in a couple of hours. So it just serves as a reminder that in these situations, things are very fluid. You can hear one thing from one source and one from another. We really don't know what's going to happen, which is why we have a team of people on top of this situation throughout our entire viewing area. The Army has confirmed that 5 people were shot. 2 of them are here at Savannah Memorial Hospital, or rather one person is here. Another is in transit to Savannah Memorial Hospital. We know that this is the only level 1 trauma center in the area. It's the only hospital that is fit to help people with critical injuries, as you would imagine somebody would sustain had they been shot. I can tell you that in a typical situation, if somebody was hurt, if they were in a car wreck, if they had been shot, if they had been injured anyway, if we had the names of those people, we would be able to reach out to the hospital and they would be able to confirm what that person's condition was. They wouldn't tell us anything beyond that, but they would be able to confirm what that person's condition is. That's not how it's going to be in this situation because this is military personnel, because it is soldiers. Any information is going to come from the Army. And again, the last update that I saw from the Army was that they're not going to be releasing any additional information until their investigation is complete, though we do know that that could change. I would say around 15 minutes ago, officials from Memorial Hospital told us that the next soldier was set to arrive here in about 25 minutes, so we are expecting somebody to be here in 10 minutes or so. We will keep you updated when that person arrives, but for now, I am going to send it back to the studio.
Shay, with continued information and updates now, of course, in that 10-minute time period that she mentioned, the next person is expected to come to. We'll get back to Shay so you all can watch that unfold as well as we did with the first soldier.
And also, as we were talking about, President Trump being aware of what's going on, more than likely as well, his people are also offering any assistance that they can to Fort Stewart. And we could probably have FBI investigators or whoever they need in order to make sure they have a complete idea of what happened there today and how to make sure that it never happens again.
We're hearing from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp today as well on this. You see his statement right there on your screen. He says, "We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same." Of course, this isn't what the governor, Senator Warnock, President Trump, any of them want to be talking about or monitoring today. But now we know that all of them are keeping a very close eye on this situation in our area as 5 soldiers have been shot on Fort Stewart in the 2nd Armored Brigade combat area there on base, and that there had to be a lockdown put into place. If you're just joining us, this is why we're breaking into CBS programming right now, to continue to provide updates as we learn new information.
That's true, and we just have to continue to commend everyone who was involved today. Within about
All right, we are looking now at ambulances arriving at that level 1 trauma center in Savannah, Georgia. Quite a long drive between where 5 soldiers were injured and a shooter apprehended following an attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Let's go ahead and listen in to WTOC's coverage.
5 people were shot on base. 2 people are here at Memorial now. That last person is being unloaded from the ambulance as we speak. We don't know the extent of anybody's injuries, nor do we know the status of those 3 other soldiers. We do know that they were being treated at Wynn Army Community Hospital, which is on base, and that anybody that needed further treatment was going to be taken here to Memorial in Savannah. So we are hoping that those other soldiers are not in need of critical care, and that is the reason that they haven't been taken here to Memorial. But that 2nd soldier, I can see them on a gurney right now being wheeled into the building, and we can see police officers as well as we're
all right, seeing the first arrivals of the soldiers to that level 1 trauma unit right now. We have the opportunity to talk by phone to someone named Eric Boyle. Eric was at Fort Stewart when the shooting happened, went into lockdown as officials went into action. Just to be clear, as we listen to you talk to us, Eric, you do not live on the base, but you work on the base as an electrician. So take us to those moments right after you first got word. What did you see and what did you hear, Eric?
They contacted us and just told us that there was an active shooter on base, and we were coming off lunch, and they just put us in lockdown. We couldn't go nowhere. But hopefully all the people that were involved is okay, and their families. That stuff like this should not happen.
And you were there when it happened and when those alerts went out. Other than the alert, did you hear any gunfire, and what did you see?
Well, we hear gunfire all day long because we're on the range, but we didn't actually hear. I was in my car, so I had the radio on. I didn't hear the actual shots, but it's right down the road. They closed the main gates and shut everything down.
So did the alert, Eric, go over the radio that you had on?
They called us, our general contractor, and then called our supervisor.
And then when alerts like that go out, you quickly look up over your steering wheel and your dash, and you see the situation changing in real time. Paint a picture for our viewers of what you saw happen in response to that alert there.
We just make sure everybody was around and gather, to our meeting site and make sure everybody's safe that's in our area.
You know, a lot of people see these things play out on the news and they think, well, this could never happen where I am, especially behind the tight security of an Army base. It had to have been a moment of shock to think that there was an active shooter situation inside that perimeter, Eric.
Yeah, definitely.
So where are you right now, and what's next for you today?
I guess we're just going to finish the day, and we're off of lockdown now. They told us, everything was clear, the shooter was apprehended, and I hope everything's okay with the, people, the victims.
Right, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you talking to us, Eric, an electrician at Fort Stewart, there inside that perimeter during the shooting. We're glad you're okay. All right, let's go to correspondent Chanel Call, who continues to watch all of the latest developments on this story closely. Chanel, what do you have?
Well, 2 of the soldiers we now know arrived at Memorial Hospital in Savannah. This happened at about 1:20 this afternoon, Reed. This, we should mention, is the area's only level 1 trauma center, which may tell us something about the severity of their injuries. There was a bit of a delay, as we know, in getting them there because bad weather essentially prevented a helicopter transfer. So they were taken to this hospital by ambulance, which obviously took longer. Now, those 2 soldiers we know were among 5 people who were shot during this incident at Fort Stewart this morning. The 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, they went into lockdown just around 11 o'clock this morning. This team, we've been talking about this, Reed, is known as the Spartans. They've been trained to be the Army's most modernized, most lethal unit. Let's talk about what happened during that lockdown. The Army had advised people that were there on the base to stay inside, to close and to lock their doors and windows. And the last time we spoke, Reed, I showed you that video of what it looked like inside the base at that time, and you saw some of those military members mobilizing and walking quickly through the base, trying to respond to this active shooter situation. We know by 11:35, the active shooter was apprehended by the Criminal Investigative Division of the Army, and then about 40 minutes later, the lockdown was lifted for the main containment area, but the 2nd ABCT complex, that is still, as I understand, in lockdown for now. But we are being told that there is no public safety threat at this point. In fact, there were lockdowns at 3 elementary schools that are actually on that base. Those lockdowns, Reed, were lifted. You just had been speaking to someone who was on that base, a military member that had witnessed this moment, and he talked about this really powerful moment of hearing gunfire on the base sort of all the time because they've got shooting ranges there. Right. And so we're just starting to understand what it was like to be there during those probably terrifying and a bit chaotic moment. I also want to point out that we're hearing that there may be a press conference later on this afternoon, so we're hoping to learn more and piece the story together, and we'll take you there live as soon as that begins, Reed.
That's right. Chanel Call, thank you for that. We'll talk to you in just a few minutes. But to Chanel's point and scaffolding off of that, WTOC, the CBS affiliate there in Savannah, Georgia, they have a reporter positioned outside that hospital. Let's go back and listen in.
We do hear lights and sirens right now. We were told about 25 minutes ago that we could expect the other victim that is expected here at Memorial to be here in about 25 minutes. I can hear those lights and sirens right now, and the ambulance is coming around the corner. I see a Georgia State Patrol vehicle pulling in, a Georgia State Patrol truck, so they were likely escorting the ambulance here. And after that, we can see an ambulance coming in behind them. So this is going to be that soldier. They have a full police escort, as you can hear, trying to step away so y'all can hear over the sirens. But we see a Chatham County Sheriff's car, a Georgia State Patrol car, a Savannah Police Department vehicle. I saw, I believe, a Georgia Department of Public Safety vehicle as well. Now, the ambulance is presumably carrying that 2nd soldier, has pulled into Memorial Hospital's ambulance bay right now. It's clear that this person is in need of help. The staff here at Memorial Hospital has been standing by since just after 11 o'clock this morning when we first learned of this event. Now, the first patient was brought here, I would say, around 25 minutes ago, and now this is that second patient from the Fort Stewart Army base that's here at Memorial to receive treatment. Now, I'll remind you again that Memorial Hospital here in Savannah is the only level 1 trauma center in our area. It's the only hospital that is fit to treat serious or critical injuries like we can presume this soldier has. Fort Stewart and the Army has confirmed that 5 people were shot on base. 2 people are here at Memorial now. That last person is being unloaded from the ambulance as we speak. We don't know the extent of anybody's injuries, nor do we know the status of those 3 other soldiers. We do know that they were being treated at Wynn Army Community Hospital, which is on base, and that anybody that needed further treatment was going to be taken here to Memorial in Savannah. So we are hoping that those other soldiers are not in need of critical care, and that is the reason that they haven't been taken here to Memorial. But that second soldier, I can see them on a gurney right now being wheeled into the building, and we can see police officers as well. As we're going to take a zoom out here, we see another ambulance coming in. We don't know, don't believe it's related to the situation. We were told that there were going to be 2 patients from Fort Stewart coming here, and we have seen both of them now. There is a very heavy police presence in this ambulance bay. We saw several vehicles escorting the ambulance. Now, you might be asking again, if these patients are in critical condition, why weren't they taken by air? Why weren't they taken via helicopter? And that would seem to originally be the situation, but unfortunately the weather in our area prevented a helicopter from safely getting up in the air. So these soldiers had to be taken by ground via ambulance from Fort Stewart here in Savannah. And as we all know, that can be a fairly long trek, especially at this point in the day, which is why the second soldier likely came in with a police escort to get them to this hospital as quickly as they possibly could so they can receive the critical care that they're very much in need of. I can tell you that that first soldier did not have a police escort. They were brought in from the Army ambulance. This second soldier did have a police escort, and we can see those multiple agencies, including the Georgia Department of Public Safety, the Savannah Police Department, the Chatham County Sheriff's Office, and the Georgia State Patrol are still in the ambulance bay right now. We are working to get information on what the condition of these victims are. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In a typical situation, when somebody has been injured, if we have that person's name, we can typically reach out to staff at the hospital and they will give us what the person's condition is, whether that is critical, serious, the extent of their injuries. That's all they'll give us. But they will tell us.
And as we see those ambulances arrive at that level 1 trauma center in Savannah, Georgia, we also see this post from Facebook from Fort Stewart, where this story began. Fort Stewart, Wright Army Airfield, and Evans Army Airfield is all clear. That is from Fort Stewart talking about the gate. The gate is now showing an all clear. Now, the thoughts, the prayers, and all of the focus and attention goes on those 5 soldiers who were injured earlier when a shooter opened fire. We do know the shooter has been apprehended, but now the big question, why did this happen, especially on the inside of a highly protected, highly specialized training military base? A lot of questions to Command Your Dinner Time headlines. Nancy Chen takes over next, right here on CBS News 24/7.
This is where it happened. People still come up to me and talk about it. When you're in it, you're not thinking of the stories they'll tell. Just get yourself in the right position. You never know when a play will become legendary. When the moment comes, will you be ready?
Make it a season you'll never forget when you bet on baseball. BetMGM Sportsbook. Make it legendary.
My wife told me my hair was thinning, and I wanted to avoid that at all costs.
Let's go, baby! I stopped hanging out with the guys because I didn't want to hear the wisecracks. So I did some research and found Nutrafol, which was cool because I had no idea there was a supplement for hair.
I liked that it was drug-free and then it was clinically tested.
My hair was getting stronger and thicker.
Nutrafol has just given me more confidence, which allows me to carry myself a little taller.
It felt real good to ditch the hat.
Hair growth starts from the inside at Nutrafol.com/men.
These days you've got two choices, buying a new car or making the one you've got run like new. That's why we have thousands of ASE certified technicians to help you get more out of your car. Firestone Complete Auto Care.
Yours, dear, and your nights won't be lonely, and I promise this forever. Just take my hand, and my heart is yours, dear, and just take my hand, darling.
It's dark, there's no road signs. We need the help of Air One.
This individual did not want to be caught.
He never realized we were above the whole time.
I'm John Dickerson.
I'm Maurice Dubois.
Part of the all-new CBS Evening News.
Money Watch is your no-nonsense guide to taking control of your finances, where I offer practical, real-world advice with no jargon and no judgment. I'm Jill Schlesinger. Listen to Money Watch wherever you get your...
Thanks for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Nancy Chen, and here's a look at the top stories we're following right now. A major scare at a U.S. Army